Welcome to Oops, I'm in a Cult. We are former members.
I'm Scott Barker.
And I'm Charity Novelesi, and we were born and raised in the Living Word Fellowship, and we're here to investigate this organization that branded itself as a Christian church for over 70 years, but turned out to be just another cult.
Today we're going to have on Lauren Beckman, who was born and raised in the cult. She was raised in San Diego and eventually moved to Los Angeles. She's going to talk about the repercussions of being raised in a cult that silenced victims and perpetuated serial abuse. She was separated from her mother as a teenager and forced to be a live-in servant for one of the shepherds in San Diego, where she was physically and mentally abused.
Lauren talks about the sexual abuse she experienced as a small child and how after she moved to LA, she was sexually abused by Rick and then suffered a traumatic sexual assault that Gary and Marilyn and other leadership covered up and denied while shaming and blaming her for it. She'll tell us about the lasting effects these experiences have had on her and her continued work in healing.
Welcome to the whatever fucking podcast this is.
You don't want to mention that it's the Living Word
No,
Fellowship?
I think that's great, but is it just going to be called the Living Word Cult Podcast?
No.
Oh, what could it be? What could it be, Charity? You and I are both former members, Living Word Fellowship.
We're investigating the ins and outs of our experience.
In and Out Podcast.
You can cut that part out. It's real casual.
It guaranteed is going to break down very quickly, which is totally fine. It's the Living Word Fellowship. It's the walk.
Thought it was a church, turned out it was a cult. Oh, there's a good...
That's what it is. That's it.
I mean, I kind of love it.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. Oops, I'm in a cult.
Lauren, thank you
Yes.
for joining us. Well, I know you have just bags and bags of stories, so
Yeah.
we can just kind of talk generally, or you can pull up one of those memories of just like what this culture was like.
It was super confusing because growing up in San Diego, I think a lot of churches thought of San Diego as the squeaky clean church, the super obedient, the good girl of the group, especially compared to like maybe LA.
Yeah.
We used to call it Smell-A, and we just like were like really like LA, you know, the terrible. But the problem with that was that we weren't. And so for myself, like I was molested, which we can get into later or now, but I was, and not only by an adult, but also by peers because they were being molested. And so that was a big part of growing up, is just the unspoken, like being squeaky clean, and then that like going on. And I know, like, I just remember we had this like anniversary party in our church for the people who were leaders of our church at one time, and they had sparkling apple cider on one side and champagne on the other side. But you know, I guess maybe it was the 80s and nobody was monitoring, but I remember getting totally drunk off of champagne at 6 years old and just laying underneath the chairs in the sanctuary and like spinning. And
Yeah.
I
There's a
think,
huge drinking
I'm
culture. You know.
And the funny thing is there was, but in San Diego there wasn't. It was just at that party. But then when you hear stories about people going into the shepherd's office and doing shots of tequila and everything, so there was like the shepherds could do it. It was just, and it wasn't that people couldn't drink. It's just it wasn't for me. When I got a real taste of the drinking culture is when I moved to LA.
Yeah.
The functional alcoholism that we. And the multiple bars that we built into our church to support.
Yeah.
Because we're not religious.
I like the way you say that too, is that like there was this like huge drinking culture in LA and the functional alcoholism. And so we just had to build multiple bars at the church to support this drinking habit.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't working with just the one bar or the like few that
But
we
the
had.
culture, like you saying that even in San Diego, it being the squeaky clean church, but there was still that going on, and like the lack of monitoring the children or like caring enough. It's some of the same reasons why, you know, you brought up your molestation, and that's in some of the notes you gave us. I don't know if you want to talk about that more, but where you actually were trying to tell somebody that these things were happening to you. And
it was getting reframed and pushed under the rug. And yeah, because it was just, it didn't fit into that picture frame, that squeaky clean, that good stuff. And so it just couldn't be. What I found is that the church really protected people in leadership positions and men in general, I mean, with the rare exception, and that women and children were not as protected when I was growing up. I was an exact example of that. I think my mom was I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but was an example of that. But yeah, like it was confusing growing up in San Diego with all of the rules and then all of the things that were happening. I mean, I graduated from a really small school, right? So I went to public school for elementary. And then in 7th grade, we had a church school like the LA school, but it started at 7th grade. And we were not taught sex education. As a matter of fact, in 6th grade in public school, the shepherds at the time instructed our parents to have us sit in the back and grade papers and not participate in sex education. I think my mom did let me, actually. I was like the only kid. And so that was very, I guess, brave of her, but she did let me go to like 1 or 2 of the videos they played. I think they played like a set of 6, but very selective. And I think it was more like about body functions mostly, not about other stuff. And then when I was in junior high school, very minimal. I think we had a health book and it was mostly self-study. There was a teacher on hand that I think kind of like graded papers and maybe answered some questions. But again, the health book was a lot more just about like body function and not about really anything else. And so the main form of contraception that we were taught was abstinence, and that was a requirement. Like I was even given a purity ring when I was 14 to save myself until marriage. And I was like, that was a promise I made. The church we grew up in was very legalistic. We had lots of words in like our youth groups and different things about how things were black and white and there's no gray area. But I'll probably bring this up again, but when things are legalistic and you're following an exact rule, but you want to do something, there's loopholes and people find a way, right? So
always, yeah.
Or they just don't do it at all. So that's the thing. It's like in junior high to high school, people were having sex. And because it was such a small school, I don't want to say much, but when abstinence is your shield of birth control and you're not abstaining, things happen.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not educating you on how to keep that from happening.
There's a lot of shame attached to that, and it could have been totally preventable.
What I find really interesting is the incredibly legalistic and like strict culture that they were projecting, that it appeared that way. Mm-hmm. But then some of these stories that you have sound like underneath the surface, that was not the case at all, especially with the leadership and other people, the way that they were treating you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, let's see, I'm thinking about like, okay, so one form of grooming that I experienced was not sexual in a way. It wasn't sexual at all, but it was grooming. I was very little, and my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. He left my mom when I was 3 and chose that over us. He was in a lot of pain. He'd had a lot of pain in his trauma in his lifetime. When he found John, he was able to put a lid on it for a little while. And when John died, he couldn't hold the lid down anymore. And he didn't really have resources or help for that. And so he self-medicated. And but I was his daughter. And I think as things were just a little bit more loosey-goosey back then than they are now. And so he was allowed to see me. And some really traumatic and strange things happened while I was with him. I drowned when I was with him on a fishing trip. I was pulled out of the water. We were in the San Diego Bay, and there was a floating dock, and there was a bait and tackle store at the end of the floating dock in the middle of the bay. And they had these like floating concrete and like pallets, I guess, that would like come together and separate. And my dad told me not to follow him because I had little legs, and, I don't know what he was thinking. He just let me. I think I was 4 and a half maybe. Mm-hmm. And I went between, they separated when I took a step and I went under. And it took for him all the way to go purchase bait and come back to notice I wasn't missing. And then he saw my pink skirt, and he said he thought it was a fish, and he pulled me up out of the water and then resuscitated me. And anyway, before he took me back to my mom's house, I was taken to his shepherd's house and told that I could not tell my mom what happened, that if I did, that I could never see my dad again, that he would go to jail. Another time, this happened more than once. So another time, this is just another example. We were at a Mexican food restaurant. He was taking me to get like food he was taking me to get food. and he got into an altercation or some type of a confrontation with a patron of the restaurant, and they had a stained glass window in the front on their front door, and my dad punched and shattered it and like cut up his hand, and again took me to his shepherd's house and talked to me about how I was not allowed to tell my mom. And at some point what was said was that my dad could go to jail, I'd never see him again, and I could go to jail as a little kid.
You could go to jail? Jeez.
That I could go to jail. No, I think that was when he got pulled over for, sorry, this is the last one I'm going to say. He got pulled over for drunk driving, and he told me that I was probably going to get taken to CPS. And then by the grace of God, I think he blamed it like on the alignment of his car or something. I was really young. I do remember things, so he blamed it on something, and the police officers, for whatever reason, believed him. He was fully drunk though, and driving around with me. But then again, I went to that shepherd's house and was told that was the time when they were like, and you could go to jail. Or that's how I remember it. They might have said that I could just get taken away.
Yeah.
But it scared the shit out of me.
Explain how that, like being taken to the shepherds every time something like this happened. How is that grooming? What is that?
Oh, the grooming of it. Sorry.
It's okay.
This is such an important piece that I missed, was that I couldn't tell my mom.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to tell my mom. Sorry, that was the grooming part. It was a secret.
Right. Yeah.
It was a
makes a lot of
secret.
sense, yeah.
And the other part of the grooming part was lying to me and telling me how much trouble I'd be in. Sorry, that's the
no,
full circle.
that makes total sense. And those details of the story, like they paint that picture so clearly that it is, again, like you said earlier, about protecting these men at the expense of the children.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear. I mean, I just keep going.
It was so interesting too, because my dad was actually not held in high regard. Like, people loved him, but he was like a big fuck up. He was like, and he'd gotten kicked off of the property in San Diego by Gary and Marilyn, which shattered him, like devastated him. He'd gone up to LA and worked at TLW and at Southgate, and they'd rolled out the red carpet and had like a day for him with a poster and everything. And then he wanted to be a part of that church. And he in fact moved up there, but they said, we don't want you. So on top of all of the trauma that he had, he was just kept repeatedly getting rejection from the church. But until he died, he was a part of it and kept trying. He kept trying.
Yeah,
to be
that's so
good
awful,
enough.
because it's like, instead of seeing someone really needs help,
Yeah.
they just reject them and say, get the fuck out, you're not welcome here.
Oh,
Like, that is
100%.
not...
Anytime that there was something that wasn't, that the church is like the king of, or the cult, whatever, is the king of toxic positivity. Anytime something uncomfortable happened, it was dealt with swiftly. Don't talk about it, sweep it under the rug, forget about it. Unless it was like someone in leadership again, and they had like, they hit their toe on a couch and then we were praying for them like crazy.
Right. It was such a double standard. It's like if a leader was sick, it was battle.
Yeah.
If one of us was sick, it was like, well, you're just like,
yeah.
catabug.
When I lived up in LA, a rock hit my window, and my shepherd told me, what was I doing in disobedience for that to happen?
Oh my God. Yes. That's so typical. But if it had happened to her, she'd have been like, oh, I'm under spiritual battle because I'm so important.
Or maybe she wouldn't have thought anything. I don't know. It was the way the things were posed. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Like,
that's just terrible.
It just raises this question to me, like even just hearing this very simple story of your father being ignored by the church, all of his extremely obvious problems being ignored and pushed under the rug by the church, and then you being not taken care of and being silenced about it, all of that stuff. It just raises that question, like, what's the point of the church? Like, if they're they're not being a community to help anybody. It's just shoving things down and keeping people suppressed and under control. It's so silly to me.
To me, in my experience, it was wolves in sheep's clothing. A lot of my lifetime and that broke my mom's heart, because she did everything and paid for me to go to this private school and did everything she could as a single mom to give me the best life and protect me. And she really believed. And that's the thing is, on another podcast, somebody had mentioned about our church that it was the beliefs and then there's the behaviors, and that what made us not a cult was that the beliefs were intact. But I disagree with that, because well, first of all, I don't think our beliefs were without cultish vibes. And also, the behavior was very cult-like, total blind obedience and submission and
Yeah.
gaslighting and reframing and all of those keywords that I know now that I knew existed then, but I didn't have those words or those descriptions to give me power to be able to dissociate. And I was just living in it, and it was just totally confusing.
If you're just only in that environment, and they're only feeding you that information, and they're telling you like, don't read anything else, don't even associating with people outside the cult was like kind of discouraged. And
for sure. Oh, for
if
sure.
You're not exposed to anything but their teachings, like how are we going to know, how are we going to have any knowledge to get perspective,
Yeah, I didn't even start really driving until I was 18. And I was going to the church school, and it was very sheltered. I was very sheltered. Into my even into my 30s, there's areas I was very mature in, but I was also very young, because even if you stop doing the dedicated relationships or the Elijah, Elisha, or whatever you wanted to call it, just the shepherd and the sheep, it was a parent-child relationship, even though you were not a child anymore.
Right. Well into adulthood, they promoted that. And it causes arrested development. It really does.
It does. Yeah. It does. So when my husband and I left, it blew our mind how many experiences that most people had gone through in their life, just because we lived in church housing like our whole life. So we didn't deal with leases, or for myself, I rented a room from someone in the church or their guest house or something. I mean, it was just, I'd never done an apartment, let alone a mortgage, and I'd always lived, primarily with roommates and that were also in the church. And so then again, there's all that sheltering, because when you're not at your 9-to-5 job, you're around people who are in the same, I mean, all of us probably experienced a lot of that. It's just, you're surrounded by people who are in the same belief system as you. So you're not exposed to a whole lot. I mean, luckily I was a makeup artist. And so I was around a variety of people. And because our church was so anti-LGBTQIA, or back then just calling it gay, I was thinking about how when something happened with my car and it wasn't working, and I needed, it had gotten towed, and I needed a ride to pick it up. And the person who I called to ask for help, I had asked if their mother-in-law could help take me because she was retired. Or no, maybe I just asked her if she could help take me, and her mother-in-law ended up doing it. But at first she was telling me that I needed to take a bus to go get my car and not help me. And I just moved to LA, and I didn't really know a lot of people, and ended up that she took me, but then she told me that I needed to buy her lunch, which of course I'm a very kind and generous person. And I did take her to where she wanted, but I was also very poor. I think my car got towed because it was just a dumb kid thing. I had the tags in my glove compartment that they had sent to me. I just forgot to put them on the outside of my car. And so my tags were expired. And so it got towed. That's what happened. And then that was like $340 or something to get it out.
God. And then this lady, instead of just doing you a solid, she's like, buy me lunch.
Yeah. It was fine. I was happy to. I mean, I love the lady, but then the thing is that then I'm working with a bunch of fabulous gay people, and they give me the shirt off their back with no question and no attachment. And they were just, so that's my point. My long story, and the point getting there is that what Christianity in my mind should be wasn't what I was necessarily experiencing.
Right. And
from the people that we were taught were wrong and going to sin, I was seeing Christ-like love.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
The love, the connection, the care.
Well, that's the community that was in the church was not, we weren't, we were told we were a family. We were told all of this weird dynamics that were there, but there wasn't this unconditional love. There wasn't this kind of I'll do anything. It sounds like it was very structured, very much so submit. It's a submission and authority kind of relationship you had with everybody, because everybody was in this network, and there was always
100%.
Something being taken or given in there.
Transactional.
It was a transactional, conditional love. That's all I knew growing up, was this transactional, conditional love. I mean, I think my mom, until my husband, is the only person that I ever did experience a pure love from. And, but at least I
Yeah.
got to experience it. Some people didn't.
Yeah.
That's true. No, there was that feeling of being disposable. Scott and I were talking about this yesterday.
Oh,
where
totally.
I still struggle with that, because it's like that. What you're saying is the feeling that if I'm not either doing what I'm told by these people, or I'm not doing it right in their eyes, or I'm not abiding by their rules, it's like you're out. There's no. All, like you said, the love is completely conditioned on how you
Yeah.
behave and if it's according to their standards. And
Yep.
it's like, if it's not, it's like you never existed to them. That's
Yeah.
how it felt. They'd cut you off
Yeah.
in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just a dangling carrot you were never going to get. So you kept trying to prove yourself through actions, by making yourself available, by giving more and more and more of yourself, because you were taught to get that carrot. And but you couldn't.
They would
And
always
then
push
the deeper in you'd get, the more abuse you'd get.
Oh, yeah.
So the desire you're taught for is to be a part of the inner circle, which
And the
is
inner
hard to do.
circle's the
And then when you're in
worst.
the inner circle, it's living hell on earth.
Yeah.
I mean, it was for me and my husband.
Yeah, yeah, and we
Yeah.
definitely are going to talk about a lot of that. I wanted to know if you would talk a little bit first about your experience moving in with one of the leaders.
A youth
of
group
the- 'cause-
pastor.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a trip. He cycled girls in and out of his house, and I lived with him for over a year.
Was this in San Diego?
This was in San Diego. So I didn't move to LA till I was 21. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, this was in San Diego. I was a teenager. And I was a teenager. I don't think I was that disobedient or that crazy, but I was going through things and whatever. And it's kind of like how, those kids are sent to those camps to like break their spirits, like when they're being a little rambunctious. I wasn't like being promiscuous. I had an eating disorder. And I needed help for that. Like I needed help for that, but I don't think being moved into his house was the help I needed.
You needed professional help, but they didn't.
Uh-huh.
They
They had
didn't really
professional help
promote
for that. But he had talked to me and said, you need a father in your life. Because again, my dad was off and on and, into his, in like a roller coaster of his addiction throughout my life. And so he was basically moved me into his house, and had my mom give him money for rent and food. And then when I was there, it was a pretty hellish experience. I cleaned and cooked and took their kids to school in the morning and picked them up in the afternoon and helped them with their homework. And when they'd have nightmares in the middle of the night, I'd go into their room and comfort them. I'm not certain that they asked me to do that, but I just did. I loved their kids. And I was like a servant in their house. And I remember I would do things that nobody would consider wrong. Like he grounded me because I didn't make my bed correctly. I made my bed. He just didn't think it was done well enough. He wouldn't let me go if a friend was having like a birthday party. I couldn't go. If we were on break, I couldn't hang out with friends. I was up at the church working, weeding, using a ditch witch or a bobcat. I mean, I barely used the bobcat. I think they just let me do it once for the experience because I was a stupid woman. But just kidding.
Yay,
I'm
misogyny.
just kidding. That's not. I mean, I did not really get a lot of experience on the bobcat, but the other equipment I did. And so I was working, and I actually formed a really fun bond with somebody during that time, an adult, and not an icky one, just a friendship, because I was working alongside of them and we'd go get donuts together. And so, but it was still like tough love, right? The whole time I was there. And, I did something very minimal, and he used to do things to me, like tell me that the Lord showed him what I did, so I better just tell him in my own words. He wanted to hear it from my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a psychological like manipulation. Like I didn't do anything wrong. So then I'd think, and I'd say something like, I was bulimic and anorexic when I stopped that when I moved into his house, but I think I had a couple slip ups. And so I think one time I told him like that I either thought about throwing up or that I had thrown up or something. Probably that I thought about it, because I don't know that I did it that much. I was too scared of him. But just for that admission, he threw me against the wall. He held me up by my neck, my feet off the floor. He was speaking to me in my face. Spit was hitting me. I think he actually spit on me on purpose, is in my memory, just frothing at the mouth, and told me he would kill me if I did it again, or if his girls picked up on it. And it was terrifying, you know, and I wasn't allowed to watch television or unless it was a basketball game and I was invited in. I went to Israel during that time frame with him and his wife. And I just was bringing that up because this is something that they would do at their house, would be that they would not make eye contact or talk to me if I did something wrong, him especially. It was, you know, nonverbal communication, but he wouldn't tell me what was wrong. And I didn't know what I did wrong. And most likely it was nothing because
you didn't make your bed or whatever. Things. Yeah.
But when I went to Israel with the youth group and everything like that, the entire trip, which was, I think, like 2 weeks or something, they wouldn't make eye contact or talk to me. And I just did not know what, and this was, I don't know, it was just so confusing.
The withholding of affection, and where it's like crazy making, where you're like, what did I do? And it's such a control tactic. It's like, it's did I already say, like, it's a manipulation? It's like, I'm going to show you that I'm mad at you without saying it. And that puts you in this vulnerable position, because then you're like desperate to gain their affection back or their attention back, and they're just withholding it.
Cool. I did during this time. This was a youth shepherd at the church in San Diego. Yeah. That was this person that brought you in. And where was your mom? Did you see her often in this situation?
No, I did see her once in a while, and around that time frame, I don't know if it was, it was around that time frame. So what this shepherd had told my mom and I was that we needed to break our bonds and stop having a soulish relationship, and that we had to have a spiritual relationship, but that he wasn't even sure that we could have that, but he'd let us know when. So I'm thinking, because legalistically, and I'm being trained to be so obedient, I'm thinking that I may never have a relationship with my mom again.
So that's scary for a teenager. Was scary.
And also during that time when I was at his house, he would just break me down and break me down and break me down and break my spirit. And then when I was numb and done crying and there was nothing left in me, he'd tell me that my spirit had never been more beautiful and I needed to stay in this place.
Oh God, that's so disgusting.
Yeah.
It was hard.
It's using the language and the whole, again, this is like when somebody does this to you, if you were to like take all the religious stuff out of it, you just call it abusive. They're just straight up abuse. And this adding the layer of like spirituality into it makes it, in the moment, it makes it feel more like, oh, you're doing this like religious thing with it. It's like these rules, for the shepherds to come in and to say like, oh, no, we need to like fix her spirit. You need to break your bonds with your mom because that'll elevate you to like a new level of spiritual whatever BS. It just makes it even worse. It makes it harder to fight that because it's just so clearly like he's literally just some dude taking a teenage daughter away from her mom and saying, you guys need to like, your relationship needs to be less, and then abusing her.
I mean, he was using me as free help, and it worked out, and he was getting paid for it.
He was getting paid for it, right? Because your mom was paying your room and board, and so you're basically like a live-in maid and nanny, but you're not getting paid; you're paying them.
Paying for the privilege, yeah.
And around that time, well, anyway, when I was, I want to be careful with certain things. So when I was a youth, an older youth, I was babysitting a younger youth, and they shared about them being currently at that time molested. And I was ready to call the police. I wanted to call the police. But because of that tattletale nature, that submission, that sharing everything that was ingrained in me since birth, I called my shepherd first. And I was screamed at when I shared what was being shared. And no, you don't go to the police. We're handling this. You forget this ever happened. You let this leave your head. You don't know anything. I mean, I was threatened. It was like I'd seen this person angry before. I could, in my mind, see like the veins coming out of their neck and their like forehead, it was just the bright red of their face, like when they were yelling at me over the phone. And this little boo-boo was just like broken and crying and needed help. And I felt so helpless. And,
Yeah.
but I did trust that they were going to take care of it. But I ultimately found out that it was very minimal to nothing that was done, which
Of course.
again, when I was molested, is that okay for me to talk about this at this
Yeah.
point? So
Yeah.
when I was molested, it is a great, like fuzzy as far as my age. It was between 4 and 6 years old. And so based off of what a friend's parent heard at their house, they went to they went to the shepherds and divulged exactly that information. And then the shepherds told her again that they're handling it, that she couldn't talk to my mom about it, or just to forget it and yada, yada. And then when they talked to my mom about it, they withheld the information, the details of what I was saying. They just vaguely said, we think something, Lauren might have been exposed to like some adult content at a friend's house. And they said I was saying inappropriate things as a little girl. I was saying inappropriate things. And and they said that one person told my mom, even chastised her, and was like, that's why I'm so careful selecting whose house my child goes over to. I mean, it wasn't the house that I was at when that revelation was made. They were saying it would happen at another house. But anyway, like they
shamed your mom.
But they shamed my mom and they blamed me for saying inappropriate things when they knew what had been shared with them.
Yeah.
And what had been shared with them was clearly molestation. They didn't, go to the police. And then because they didn't give my mom all the information, what was she supposed to do? But she was freaked out anyway. And she took me to the doctor and I did get an exam. And I was so full of shame and also nervous because, again, I don't know what the rules were then, but she was not in the room with me. And I don't remember like a nurse or someone. It was just me and a man in a room.
Oh, that's
And it
terrifying
was
when you've just been
uncomfortable,
being
and he was
molested
looking
and yeah.
And I was just I was dodging his questions. I wasn't answering his questions. I was giggling. I was making nonsense. And he said, yeah, I cannot tell. It's inconclusive. I can't tell what's going on here. And she didn't know what to do with that information. So life just moved on. And I wasn't talking, I wasn't saying, it was like nope, don't talk. This is getting attention.
Because when you try to,
and it's embarrassing, and I'm just gonna clam on up and shove that down deep.
Yeah, because the messaging was that you're wrong, you're bad.
Oh,
or you're not telling the truth. And
back to the grooming part with those interactions with my dad, it was always don't tell your mom, don't tell your mom, don't tell your mom.
Yeah.
But I would find ways around, and I would say weird things, not about that necessarily, but just about like alluding to stuff, like because I felt like I should tell my mom, but then I was fighting against that, and I was trying to be obedient. It was so confusing growing up.
They really did that. I feel like they were very calculated in trying to separate children from their parents, especially if they sensed that you had a parent like your mom who was very invested in you and cared and would have wanted to know those things.
Yeah.
And would have maybe stood up and said, hey, this is not right. What's going on? But it seemed like they knew if you had a parent like that, and that then they wouldn't have as much control. So then they would do that thing of you need to break your bonds and you have a soulish relationship, which really was probably just that your mom really cared about you. And you had a close relationship. So she had too much influence on you, more influence than the shepherds. So they've got to like cause that divide.
It was just another way to have control.
It shows how strong you are, your intuition and just your sense of what's right, because they constantly had to stop you. They constantly had to turn you a different direction. They had to silence you. They had to do, but you had it inside of you to do the right thing. And that's amazing that you held on to that for so long, because they were constantly trying to shove it down. Don't tell your mom. Don't speak about this. Even later, when you saw it happening to somebody else, you knew what the right thing to do was. And you just needed a little bit of support from an adult, a little bit of support from somebody. And instead, they told you to shut up. They screamed at you. Their veins were popping out of their face. It shows how much effort they put into silencing people. It wasn't just levels of brainwashing. It's like when somebody who was strong and who did have a clear sense of what right and wrong showed up, they needed to work to keep you quiet.
Yeah.
It's really, really fucked up.
It is.
Yeah.
I also I still struggle a lot with, but life is life. I just not doing more for myself or for others
Mm-hmm.
because of being taught to not trust myself and be obedient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you find that you've,
What's that?
go ahead. Do you find that you have a difficult time, like, trusting your intuition or making decisions because
No.
you were so gaslit? Yeah, now.
Yeah. It's something that I've been actively working on since we left, and I'm better with. But it's something that I'm going to need tools for probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like they really knew, and there was somebody like you who had a strong mind and a strong sense of, like Scott was saying, of right and wrong, and to make you doubt yourself. And all those times they were like, again, just trying to silence you, make you feel wrong, and then you're like, well, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I shouldn't trust my gut on this or my intuition.
Yeah.
And that, like you're saying, it carries forward into post-cult life.
Yeah,
It's hard to recover that.
That is something I still struggle with, is the fear of getting in trouble.
Yes.
I to this day, as a grown adult, am always afraid of getting in trouble, because it was also something that was ground into you. And the thing is there was conflicting messaging. So I was just always ready to freeze because I wasn't sure if I was getting in trouble or not for
Absolutely.
anything. I had no clear picture of.
Because it was always changing. They were always moving the target, right? So it's just like
and
kept you.
rules would change for different people. So they'd have a set of rules, and then certain people could get away with certain things and other people couldn't, or people were held really harder to a rule than other. And it was
They
confusing.
kept you really off balance that way.
It did, which kept you in confusion, which kept you loyal, because you kept looking for them to figure out what your next move was or what you're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say too, and I just wanted this for context for people to understand, in case anybody's like, well, kids explore and they play doctor and stuff. And that's true. And they do. And we did. But I just wanted to say this, the level of doctor that was being played, I went over to a friend's house and we were little, and she told me we were going to take down our underwear and kiss each other's vaginas. And so I just wanted to say that for anybody who was, that's above playing doctor's pay grade. You know what I mean? That is,
Right.
There is more to that than, that's definitely influenced by an adult. That's not something that little kids think of. And
Right.
I just only am sharing that example because I want people to understand, or even people in my generation who maybe that grew up in San Diego, who maybe just played doctor and didn't have that or didn't do that at all, that it was going on. And that's just an example to the extent that it was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you have a memory of this happening where another little girl said that to you. And that's a further than just like the normal exploration.
Pumping a pillow or whatever it is that people do.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say whatever it is that people do. I did it. We used to name our pillows and kiss them and hump them. It was,
Yeah. It's totally normal. Same.
or we'd find somebody who we had a crushes on jacket and kiss it or whatever. And just,
Yeah.
or other stuff too. But I don't know what other people's, but I'm just saying that experience that I just described, I remember clearly, and because also I said I have a stomach ache and I need to go home. And then my mom came and picked me up, and then their mom was like, every time you come over, you always want to go home and blah, 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 blah. And she was mad because in her mind, she didn't know what was going on. And I'm breaking her kid's heart because I don't want to stay for the sleepover part because I'm I don't want to do this.
You don't feel safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's not but then, and I don't have every memory of this, but a friend shared with me that I tried to do something with them, initiate. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's just
But
confusing.
do you think that that's because both of you, your friend that proposed that scenario, and then you were both probably, you obviously were molested. She probably was being molested too. And there you have this exposure to sexual things at an age that you really wouldn't normally. So you're acting that out with other people.
Yeah, and I think that my gut response to it was like a stomach ache and hating it in my body, and it didn't feel exciting. That's what I remember, and I think other people's it was exciting, and it might have caused those reactions too, but they were more perpetrators of that in that with other kids and stuff. And anyway, I don't know how to finish that sentence.
It shows like, you know, because these things are like really confusing, I think, and probably hard to like separate out. Like, this is somebody was molested. This is like not whatever. But like in this culture, in this world, like if your kid is doing something like that, and if they're with another adult, like how do you know what's going on when, like, first off, you're not even like, they're not even allowed to tell you that something happened because they're constantly being like shut out and silenced. And so it is really scary to hear things like that. That were going on.
And I think one reason why I wasn't telling my mom about like just saying I had a stomach ache and I needed to go home and stuff and not explaining what happened is because even though I didn't tell my mom, you know, when what was discovered was happening to me previously, the whole way that it was handled, I think that just I was so little, I'm just speculating on why I didn't, but I think mostly just the shame attached to it, knowing that it was wrong and not wanting to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And the whole culture of shame surrounding sex in the Living Word Fellowship, Christianity at large, but there was this like particular brand of fuckery with the message that Marilyn brought with Girls Turn It Off, which was basically the message was, if anything like this happens to you, it's your fault.
Right.
You know, that's so funny that you said, yes. Yeah, I learned that any type of positive male attention that was directed towards me was my fault.
Yes.
And consequently, I did not have a boyfriend until my 20s because I was so good at putting my spirit in my shoes. You know what I mean?
Your girl, turn it on. Don't turn that shit off.
I turned that shit off hard. I did want a boyfriend. I did want all of those things. I didn't get them though until my early 20s. I think that the messaging and me in my past, just things kind of, I was a late bloomer there because it just was confusing and weird. And
so that brings you like, should we fast forward then to your 20s when you moved to LA and kind of just because this is a great foundation, like hearing everything that you went through. It was like the perfect setup for you to be abused by Rick and whoever else, because you're kind of conditioned to think, oh, this is whatever's happening to me is something that I did, or I should accept it as being okay. Is that a decent representation of the feelings surrounding it, or?
Yeah. So I did. I moved up to LA. I moved up to LA to become a makeup artist, and also because I was in love with a boy. So it really pushed me to, it wasn't my husband at the time, it was somebody else. It was puppy love.
Cute.
But very real to me. It was actually not that cute of a relationship because I was keeping myself pure, but he was helping me save that by sleeping with other people.
Oh, great! Thanks so much.
So we were off and on. We were off and on for like 4 years, but oh my God, I loved him. I loved him so much. I would have done anything for him, and even with him cheating on me, kept taking him back because I thought he was my soulmate.
Yeah, that's some first love stuff right there, baby.
First love stuff. I was learning a lot of lessons later in life, so too, because I hadn't really dated as a teenager or whatever. So I'm in my early 20s, and we're together, and we weren't supposed to be together, and then they finally gave us permission. It was very Romeo and Juliet, and also just the level of control of that they weren't letting us date in our 20s. I mean, I think there was a protection. I think that they knew that maybe he was more immature and had some tendencies for things. Maybe there was some protection there and there was some wisdom in that, but they weren't sharing that with me. They were just...
Yeah, I wouldn't give them that much credit because it was just like...
It was a control thing that happened to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think, too, if they had just let it do its own thing, it would have worked out however way it worked out.
Yeah,
But
if they would have just let people be normal and date and figure it out for themselves instead of just being like so hands-on in this really dysfunctional way. Like you're saying, we would have figured it out for ourselves that we weren't meant to be together, or maybe we were. Like, that's not up to them. It's about the two people in the relationship.
yeah.
What a novel idea.
What a novel idea. So I moved up to LA to pursue being a makeup artist. Had these shepherds who I still love very much to this day. But in the timeline of us in our relationship, the things that happened throughout that relationship, a lot of harmful, I won't say a lot, but harmful or traumatic things happened in the way that they shepherded me through certain things. And they were kind of born into it too, or were very young when they came into it. And all of the beliefs, all of the things that we were taught to believe, all of the things that shepherds before them had been doing and showing as an example, is what they were brought up on as was right, and a way to counsel and a way to think about things. And I don't doubt their true love for me. And in our relationship, we were like family. And I feel
They were
like
just indoctrinated, deeply
they were indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And when you're indoctrinated and you're put in a position of authority, you're going to fuck people up. You just are. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. That's just the facts. That's that. And so, and they weren't my shepherds the entire time I was in Los Angeles, but for a big chunk of time, and stayed our friends even after they weren't our shepherds, and my shepherd, I should say. And I know that just hearing from other people that harmful stuff as them being their shepherds has happened to them as well. And I just am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And everybody's allowed to feel about people the way that they need to feel about people. And I just am going to talk about them because I don't know how to talk about, I'm not going to use names, but I don't know how to talk about this. But they're a huge part of my story, and a huge part of the examples of things that happened. And so,
yeah, I mean, it's like you said, though, the shepherds, like it's the recklessness of the top leadership and of the organization and the belief system that is really ultimately causing this. We've all seen that so much. The people that are kind of in the middle, in this like middle space, they end up with this authority and the leadership or whatever, their authority to make decisions for other people's lives. But they've never made decisions for their own lives because they've always had stuff dictated down to them. And it's this thing that's rotten at the core anyways. And it's all just bullshit. So yeah, sometimes you might end up with like, oh, it's okay, our relationship was all right. But over here, they just totally fuck somebody's life up. And that's all valid. It's not that they were just as abused as anybody else. And that's the terrible part. And of course, the responsibility does fall on us as individuals, but like when we're all brainwashed, like what the fuck are you gonna do with that?
And that middle management, it's like they're learning from the people above them how to shepherd, how to treat people, how to function. So they're just parroting what the top leadership is doing.
Yeah.
And because they're brainwashed, they're like, well, this is how it's done, and you kind of put aside any reservations you might have deep down, for the cause or whatever.
You moved to LA and like you were kind of taking this on this journey. You were dating somebody. You did it for dating somebody. Where did that lead you? I wanted to say this
about dating this person. So because of purity culture, and we talked about it before, the way you make out when you're in your 20s or 30s and you're not married and you're trying to do purity culture is you go, okay, I'm going to speak for me. My rule was no P in the vag or the B, okay? So that meant virginity to me. There are other Christian girls who find the loophole and it means no P in the V, but the B is okay. They even made a song called The Loophole about it. People should check it out. Or
I've heard about that.
But you can put it. You can put it in the loophole, but you can't put it in the other.
Just one particular hole.
Just one particular. So, and then also thought that I just think this is funny because I found out about it semi recently. do you know that Mormons, their loophole is called soaking? Do you know about soaking?
Yeah, I've heard that
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
That's
You
wild.
can cut this out if it's too much, but
No,
the
it's
thing that I think is wild about soaking is that you can put the pee in the vajayjay but not move
Yeah.
your bodies together, but you can still be considered a virgin. Have a friend come and jump on the bed, do bed jumping to create the movement,
This
so that
is
you
like,
guys.
I would consider that a threesome. I don't like that. Doesn't.
What I'm trying to say is that, like,
God, yes.
young girls are saving their virginity by having anal sex, and there's no shame to anal sex. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
we're talking about like a lot of the traditional chronological order of like maybe like a cis or a straight person having sex for the first time is usually the vagina.
You're usually going to start with the vagina, and then when that
Yeah.
gets boring, move on to
usually in that order. And then yeah, you're having someone do bed jumping for you while you're soaking, and it's just the legality and finding loopholes around it. So I was having I'm just gonna like label them mature makeout sessions, and then those were the rules that I maintained until I was with my husband. Before we were married, but until I was with my husband, those were the rules that I maintained. So you could have these adult makeout sessions because you're not 12 years old giving pecks on the lips or whatever.
yeah.
It's you're an adult.
You're an adult. Yeah,
You're in your
exactly.
mid-20s and early 20s, mid-20s, and you're figuring things out without And I remember, one time me and my first boyfriend were like told not to like make out or kiss, and so we just did a lot of like rubbing against each other.
Sure.
And I've heard stories like we're not the only ones.
Of
That was
course
just-
not.
People just were like, love finds a way.
That's hormones find a way.
Or whatever.
Absolutely, because it's natural. It's like you just the purity culture thing is so wild. Like you're saying with all the semantics, right? It's like people will find a way, just like with how people use the Bible to support whatever agenda they
Whatever they're
want,
doing,
whatever's convenient. It's like you can make it fit however you want it to. Just like
And the other thing that I think is wild is that all of these girls, not all these, but the people that are the song "The Loophole." One of the taglines is it's the anal, like, but the anal sex is the sex that God can't see. Is like, and so,
and yet they
and then I was like
condemn.
going, oh, sorry. It's
Well,
just
and
like,
yet that they
unless you're
condemn-
gay, unless you're a gay
Exactly.
man, and then if you're doing it, you're going straight to hell. So I'm
God.
like, I can't with Christianity anymore. And the weird, it's so weird.
It's
There's
all
so many
that's
double standards.
It's all just like
Not that-
made up shit. Like that's just so crazy to me. And the thing about sex and controlling it and putting these like random, in my experience, no one talked about anything like what the rule was and what the rule wasn't. It was just generally don't have sex. We're not going to define what sex is. And it's just like it was so unknown that everybody makes up their own rules that you come up with like, well, it should, if we just hands up in the air and we do this, that's okay. Like whatever weird idea you have, that was my thing. But it's just controlling people and inserting yourself as a church, as a religion, as a religious leader into this incredibly human place, this very, very, very human part of us. And you put yourself in there, you can control anything if you can control that. And that's what was going on here. And I think and then at the same time, of course, you're going to get into all this stuff, all the crap that like the leaders were doing and asking of you way outside of marriage. And it's just, it's not only hypocritical, it's just awful. Even if they followed the rules themselves, it's awful. But of course, they were
hardly any of them
They
did.
didn't. No.
Yeah.
And it was
I
such
did
a
wanna
double standard.
Yeah, it was such a double standard. I did want to clarify something. When I was saying that I can't with Christianity and all the rules and everything, I know that leadership wasn't saying in Christianity the loophole is to have anal sex to preserve your marriage. I wanted to clear. I'm just saying that women
That
who
is
are,
in other cultures, though, for some.
Oh, see, so there you go. But I'm just saying that like the women who are judging gay people for doing it, but it's okay for them as a loophole. I just wanted to make that clarification of
right.
Or even like you're mentioning about the fellowship's disdain for the LGBTQIA community, where you think about how Marilyn kicked out her own daughter for being a lesbian, but her son, who was a serial sexual predator,
Henry VIII, man.
Oh my God, totally. And he just he couldn't do enough bad shit to get kicked out. Like he'd get kicked out for a hot second, and then they'd be like, it's just for show.
Right. Yeah.
I made a TikTok about it. It was really funny.
Oh my God, I want to see that.
I'll send it to you.
You had some pretty sketchy experiences with Rick Holbrook.
I did. And this is the funny thing. I'm going to probably use this example. I think that Rick did sketchy things so casually to so many people that like he just, maybe there's an unawareness. And I'm going to use this in another analogy, but something that I heard that resonated with me is like when the hammer that hits all of the nails can't remember every nail that it hit, but the nail remembers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, this actually happened. Rick did something that made me feel inappropriate. It was inappropriate. It was a touch and a comment that made me feel inappropriate. And this was earlier. I don't want to totally place time. I don't know. I'm trying because of the storyline and trying to protect certain things. All I'm going to say is that I told what happened. And what happened based off of that was that my now husband, who was my boyfriend then, and I were dating and going over to Rayen Street, which was the resort that he had created. If you were in the inner circle and serving over there with your time was a high honor. And so what happened is I'd shared something and I was told, you just don't understand him. And that's just the way he loves. And
what was it that he did that you were
gross.
sharing? What was it that he did that you were telling someone?
Yeah, it was just a touch and a comment is what I want to say. So, and it made me feel uncomfortable. And so I shared it. And then of course it was the explanation of, that's just the way that he loves people. And, just that I needed to be cool with it. And then what happened is that I got uninvited to being over and serving at Rayen, but my boyfriend, who's my now husband, wasn't. And then it came into question if we were, an equal yoke, and that they had, because of how obedient we were, I think at that time, if they had told us to break up, we would have broken up, even if we were so in love with each other. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't say for certain, but I just did whatever it took to get back into the good graces to do what I could to stay with my boyfriend because they had the power to break us up. And I was, I was in love with him at that point and wanted to be with him. And so then when future things happened, I just kept my mouth shut.
Yeah. They basically you worded it as that it was their flex, right? To show you if you complain about Rick's behavior, we're shutting you out.
Yeah. It's a
we don't want to
loyalty
deal
test
with it anymore. So we're shutting it out.
Test.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was back and working at Rayen and doing the things and during that time frame, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit, but during that time frame, it wasn't all the time, but it was casual, and it happened where he'd come and slide his hand down my back and touch my butt in front of my husband. He jiggled my boobie and was like, "Hey, look at these," and my husband was furious. I mean, that's so. And,
so
and there were people around and they were laughing. And, there was a time I was in the living room at the Rayen house during the day nursing my baby, and he lifted up my nursing cover and said, "Oh, what's under here?" And I think that in his mind that was maybe teasing or joking or loving. And I froze. I was just like, holy, and then I just moved on with life, because I had to do that. You freeze and then you just reframe it to make it normal because that's the way he loves people. It's a compliment. You're getting
That's
attention.
the way he loves people is the most fucked up phrase to say that about somebody who's a predator and in a position of spiritual authority over people. That's the way he loves people. Like that is the grooming right there. It's love. It's family. It's all this shit. It's like, that is just like fucked up on so many different levels.
And then they say, oh, it's just innocent. It's innocent. It's like, really? Yeah. He's like had 4 affairs with each woman younger than the last. Mm-hmm. Like he's clearly a predator. How is it innocent?
He had more affairs than that. He just didn't marry everyone.
Oh,
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. So
those are the only ones we like are on paper, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, well, there's
more.
Yeah, there's so much.
And I really do hope some of those women come forward. Just because they were victimized by him.
I know, but there's so much just like with Rick alone that it's just like it's so ridiculous. That guy he had so much access and could do anything that he wanted because he had so much power. And, Mombi would protect him. Oh. Yeah.
It was, forever until then Mommy died. And now
and
here
then
we
Gary
are.
and Rick go, go head to head.
I don't
Who's the
think
bigger douchebag?
They ever liked each other.
No, I don't think so either.
I mean, that was kind of obvious to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Power play.
He thought he was a spoiled brat, and he was just whipped by Marilyn and did whatever she wanted for her son.
I know. Oh my God.
You might want to cut that out. I don't know.
No,
I think it's still accurate. It really is.
It's just wild because I mean, those two, they protected him. They protected more than just him. I mean, that's the thing that we're going to get into too. Is they were the ultimate. They set the stage. They set the precedent for protecting, these sexual predators or anybody that was going to threaten their power or whatever in the church.
I just talk one example too, and we can cut this out if you want to, but it's just the amount of control that Rick wanted to have over everything was like, for Father's Day, and this might seem petty, but I just want it to be an example of how it just totally destroyed me and how egotistical and narcissistic this man is. I had posted probably 20 pictures. I think I tried to post a picture for each month that my daughter and husband that I had like leading up to Father's Day. And like their first Father's Day, she was just an infant. So this was like their first Father's Day where she was like a cute little toddler. And so I posted like 20 pictures, and that might seem excessive, but I'm allowed to do that if I wanted to do a tribute to my husband on social media and post really cute pictures of my daughter. And for some reason, it upset Rick so much that Saturday before Father's Day at the workday, over at the barn, where they were building a petting zoo. I have something to say about that later too.
We were just talking about that.
Oh my God. He had a bunch of people in a group and just decided to announce to Jesse, your wife's a social media whore.
Uh-huh.
And so he called me a social media whore for doing a tribute to him. Not only that, then the next day, as I was walking into service with my toddler, my baby, he pulled me aside and corrected me. So then I went into service. I couldn't even worship. I felt like I just felt so constricted and like in trouble again for doing something that I didn't know I was going to get in trouble for. It's just so random. Mm-hmm. And then separately, like a week later, he talked to his wife and had his wife talk to me about it. It was just so overkill about how wrong I was to post these pictures, how inappropriate it was of me. And in retrospect, I realized this is the man that was basically assaulting me, touching me inappropriately. And then I just go, his and my definitions of what's appropriate and inappropriate is really different.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's
like the amount that he wanted to like be the authority in social media use and how you used it, and then shame you and like make you feel like absolute shit. And then, I realized too that like I lost a bunch of photos and I had to collect from social media photos because of the loss that I had. And there were hardly any because I didn't post a lot of them because of this, like,
he had shamed you for it, and then you're gonna like second guess it every time you want to put something up.
That's not.
So anyway,
it's not that is like, I think it's really important to share those kinds of things, because when we talk about the total control that that these people had over the lives of the followers. We often share like these really big things like marriage and relationships or jobs or health or whatever, all of this stuff. But like the nitpickiness of the like your social media post shows the total control that they're using. It is important to show that there is nowhere to escape. There is nothing that you can do for yourself, not even post pictures appreciating your husband. Like that is wild. There's just everywhere you go.
It causes this hypervigilance too, right? Where it's like, you never know. That's how I always felt too. I never know what I'm going to get in trouble for. Something that I think I'm doing that's super benign, like posting pictures on Facebook, and then you just get fucking taken to what is the word? Taken to the, what is the phrase I'm trying to think about?
To the grocery store, to the ballpark, to the
keep going.
The cleaners.
I don't know.
That's okay.
You just get like demolished for these things, and so then you just feel like, I don't know if you guys felt this way, where you're just like, the only safe thing to do is be absolutely nothing, do nothing, say nothing, don't express myself, don't be myself, don't dress in a way that draws attention, don't all those things.
And Charity, that is my youth group pastor. The youth group pastor was telling me when I was broken down and nothing, all used up, that was when my spirit was most beautiful. He played Girls Turn It Off to us multiple times of how to be. And Marilyn's saying she's not a fan of women and that we were anti-woman. And she also said for us to be nothing. That I can't remember the exact, but she basically said to be nothing. And you're absolutely right. The safest thing to do was to be nothing. And I also, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, I also wanted to just talk about control. So that's the social media thing. And it's just maybe petty, maybe funny. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. But on another note of control, and not everybody had the same experiences as we're talking about. There was different rules for different people. And the closer in you were, the more submitted. A lot of times, the more you would submit every detail of your life. And you did that in order to be close in because you were taught since birth that was the highest honor and yada, yada. So I think this wasn't unique to us, but we submitted having a child and we were told what months to try to give birth in. So to plan our timeline so that it wouldn't interfere with the feasts and events on our calendar, which was almost every single month. So we had 3 months that we had to try to shoot for. And I remember saying to them, because I'd had a miscarriage before and we hadn't planned it. And then it ended up as a miscarriage and it happened. And, but I remember saying to them that I don't know that this is going to be as easy as that, but we will try. And we did try and we did. And we had our baby in the month that was convenient for them. We also had to submit our baby's name.
Oh, yeah, that was a common practice.
We had to submit our baby's name and we got approval for our name. But my husband said, I don't care. He was getting bolder at this point because this was after Marilyn died and things were getting really a lot more. I mean, Rick really went off his rocker after his mom died as far as the level of control and the crazy things that were happening that really pushed us into a place. I mean, I know I'm segueing here about the name thing, but I used to sit and contemplate how old I would be when he passed away so that we could be free from.
Oh my God. Wow.
I was thinking, will we be in our 50s when I will have my freedom back? You know, I mean, I just didn't see a way out. I didn't know how we were going to get out. And we wanted to get out and we thought about it. But because of the conditioning, we thought that one of us might lose our lives or not from people, from ourselves because of the conditioning, because of or that we would destroy our marriage or that we'd lose our families who were very much in and involved because we'd seen it happen.
Absolutely.
And so we put up with this incredible abuse because of the fear of losing the only sentiment of nicety that we had, which was the love we had for each other and our family.
Yeah. Wow. That was the level of fear that they perpetuated, and it was to keep people in and to keep people controlled because if you're afraid you're going to lose, the fear of if you're out from under the covering, as they would say, something bad will happen to you, or you'll, at the very least, like you said, you'll lose the family members that are still involved or the friends that are still involved. Just so much fear.
my husband for years worked for the church. So he didn't have like work buddies, and I for years dropped as soon as my job would change. It was required of me. This is literally what I was told. If you and your friend are windsurfing and they stop windsurfing and go start playing volleyball and they want you to come play volleyball with them, sorry, but you're dedicated to windsurfing. So that would be applied to anybody that would like leave the church, or that would apply to anybody who you worked with if you were working in the same environment and then you left that job. They're done. They're cut out. It's done. It was sad. Like I'd say bye to people and I'd be grieving because there was really no way to maintain a relationship.
Yeah.
And, and so I don't even know where I was going with that, you guys.
Well, you're seeing, because you start on one story of where they're controlling you in this way, and then it's just like it pops up 10 other stories of different ways that they're controlling you. And I fully
Another example, I worked over at Rain a lot for like events and different things, and would start early in the morning with a lot of people and go until very late in the night, and then usually go the next day. And this was just how we were able to do things for people. I mean, we ended up having a wedding that was within budget, which we could never have the type of wedding that we had without this type of labor. And for years and years, this is something that I did alongside my shepherd, who was like, I considered like just also after she became my shepherd, when she was no longer my shepherd and I was given to two people who were higher up, she was just my friend. There was still, it's hard to, when they're your shepherd first and then they become your friend, it's hard to kind of get out of that parent-child dynamic. You can get out of it some, but it still exists there. But it was, she was my friend. But anyway, but I was working the line, and we had these Cambros, and we had these trays that had boiling water in them that were keeping the food warm on top of them. And so somebody had moved one out and accidentally lost their grip and spilled that boiling water on my leg. And it was really painful. And I actually had like a red burn, and I ended up getting like blisters and everything. And I had to go, and I had somebody who was more like a naturopathic, like healing type medicine woman lady. And then another person who was an actual nurse just try to look at my leg. And then I was sitting with like a towel around me, or like my pants on my one leg. I wasn't fully I didn't have pants on because I was wearing pants, and then my leg got burned. And I was sitting in the Rain house, and I had ice on it. And then the person came to like check in on me, and basically was like, "Are you going to get back on the line or not?" And and saying like, "I think it's just red because of the ice," like dumbing down the.
You're like, I got
the burn.
Boiling water poured on me.
Yeah.
And I said, I think I'm going to sit this one out, which I never did. I mean, even when I had strep throat with like pus in the back of my throat, I'd work till like 11 at night or 12 after working a full day. And so I just said, I think I'm going to sit this one out. And then the look I got, and the, okay, like I'm not doing a good job, but it was like the like raised eyebrows, the measured disapproval of it, and then like going back, and then me just feeling like absolute shit for not going back on with my leg hurt, and almost like I was being dramatic, like I was making it a bigger deal than it was, so I could get out of it, right?
Yeah,
I got that vibe from this person throughout our relationship on things, and it really made me feel insecure. It wasn't all the time, but it was with certain things, and this was one of them. But then they were really sick, and I don't know if we should keep this in or not, but they were really sick, really, really sick, and like gray looking. And it wasn't like a contagious thing. It was like they were really sick and going through something. And Rick forced them to sit on the couch and be apart when they really should be home in bed. Again, that is the type of behavior that was happening. So that was the type of behavior that was getting. But it's just like, I just wanted to show that example of like, nobody gave a fuck about people personally. They gave a fuck about the image collectively.
And
that's how I felt.
Yeah, and how they could use you.
I mean, we cared about each other, but I'm just talking about the way that the leadership ran and how everything, we were looked at as one and not as individuals. And that's why, people were not allowed to go on vacations hardly ever, or the people that did, I remember one time somebody was like, me and my husband never asked to go on vacations. We just went, but they had a lot of money and they gave the church a lot of money. So they were allowed to do that. But
there was definitely, they were held to a different standard, people that had money. And
right. So it was just or power or connection. There was different categories, and then you were living a different experience. Or people who were on the outskirts.
Outskirts,
who-
yeah.
The outskirts people had really different experiences. They showed up on Sundays. They would maybe help out minimally with things, and then they would like have a lot of praise and admiration for the people that were really connected in, and feel kind of bad, like I could never be that person.
Well, that's
or
the double-edged sword of that too, is like, you know, the people on the outskirts, a lot of them wanted to be included and begged to be included and weren't included. And so they, you know, that is part of their trauma is the, like, I wanted to be involved, and they try and constantly pushed out. But like, little did they know, if you were brought in, you were fucking tortured. So like, it's just no matter where, wherever you
whether
get,
they believe it or not.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
That's so true, though.
Yeah,
So it's hard. It's hard when you believe something and that's contradicted, and you're not ready for that to change. It's hard to accept that truth. And then people who are victimized, their worst fears happening because they feel like their truth is being denied again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Just
So,
it's all
speaking about that, I did want to talk about something that happened. I'm going to drink some water really quick.
okay.
I'm fine.
Okay.
You
Fine.
okay?
Talk about this all the time. Just every once in a while it hits different. And this was the time I didn't want it to hit different. So I was raped, and I was an adult, you know, I was a virgin at the time. This person did not normally travel with Gary and Marilyn. They were just traveling. This was like a one-off, and they were traveling with Gary and Marilyn. So it wasn't somebody that like worked with them, was employed by them, like, to be there. You know how in the past they'd had different people that like worked alongside of them that also like, they were like their assistants or whatever. This person was not that, but they were traveling with them. They did visit. They were somebody that I had known growing up, and somebody who I was friendly with, that I had thought was, you know, funny and nice or whatever. And we ended up having, after an event, an adult makeout session where I clearly stated my boundaries. No P in the V or the B. I think I just said no P in the V, but I thought that was just like totally clear. And they said, and they agreed, I can do that. But we had an adult makeout session, and then they didn't, and I trusted them. And then they ended up raping me. And I cussed at them, or I started cussing, and I was like, stop. And then, you know, and then they did stop. They did stop. So I guess they get a sticker for that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And just got up off of me and walked out the door. And then,
so sorry, Lauren.
it was really traumatic. It was, hold on. It was hard because I had held on to that for so long. I'd gone through a 4-year off and on relationship with somebody that I loved deeply. That was really hard to not have actual intercourse. I'm not going to call it sex, but I'm just going to say vaginal penetration with a penis, because sex is so broad. But in my limited view, with my limited sex education, I thought a penis and vagina meant sex at that time. So it was it was devastating, and it hurt, and it was all of the things, and it was not with the person that I wanted it to be with, and I was not asked. I felt so violated. I felt so much shame. I felt it was horrible, and I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even be in my house. I was renting a room at that house, and I couldn't even be in my house. I camped out. I only told one person, and I camped out at their house, and I was losing a lot of weight. I was withdrawing. I was not myself, and she was really worried, and she didn't know how to fix it. And in our past, we're taught that the shepherds can fix it, right? Even though they couldn't, even though they were you, a lot of times you getting help professionally, right? And this is something where I needed that. And so she gave me an ultimatum and basically said, if you don't tell, I will. Because she wanted to help me, and because she didn't want this guy to get away with it. He was long gone by then. This was a week or two after. And so I scheduled time to go to my shepherd's house, and I was very vulnerable, and I told them exactly what happened. And I remember this lady just tore into me and was like, "What were you wearing? Did you have your shirt on?" Just a total bitch to me that night. And I already felt so, and like they were asking me like, "What do you want to do?" Not specifics, just like, just what do you want to do? And I was just sobbing. I was like, I just want it to go away. I wish it never happened. I mean, I was like, by the way, I was, like I was talking about before, in this area, I was very immature. I was like a younger person because of the way that I'd lived my life and grown up and trying to do the right thing and not sure what that meant. And I was afraid of, I was just afraid of being in trouble, because also I was told that I played a part in it and that it was partially my fault. And
That's so awful. That is so awful that they even, I mean, that's typical
they said
when
that
women
I
come
came out
forward.
from under my covering. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just that I had come out from under my covering. And, if I hadn't come out from under my covering, like, we never gave you permission to hang out with this person. I'm 25 years old. I'm 25 years old. and I wasn't expecting, I didn't know we were gonna make out, or that I was gonna get raped. You know what I mean? Like, it was just
Right, but it's like to even insinuate that, this happened to you because we didn't give you permission to hang out with him. You're 25 years old, and what you're supposed to call them every time you want to hang out with somebody, like, yes, that's what they wanted, but to then shame you and tell you that this happened and it's your fault for either because you didn't submit it, or because what were you wearing? Like, fuck that. It just adds to the pain of what you already went through. And then they're listing off all the reasons why it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it was really hard. Ultimately, it was decided that the leadership was going to handle it. And I remember her saying, like, and you're not going to get to know, like in a bossy way, like, you're not going to get to know what the conclusion is or how he's going to be disciplined. And you're just not going to get to know those details. And I was like, I don't listen, I'm just like this broken mess. Like, please just be nice to me. Like, in my head, I'm just going like, okay. I'm not going to get to know, like, okay. Like, I was
when all you really needed was compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, I needed compassion. I needed a friend. I had to go to Planned Parenthood by myself. And I had to, basically what I said, because I was also afraid that they would like, what I said was that, I had unprotected sex for the first time, and it was unprotected. And I had to get screened. I had to do a pregnancy test. I had to get screened for STDs because of how sheltered I'd had been and how much shame was attached to sex. I just felt so alone.
Mm-hmm.
It was so scary. And then I got a call from them. They said that unless something's wrong, you won't get a call from us. And then I got a call from them, but it was that they had accidentally knocked over the sample they took, and they needed me to come back in and get a sample. But I mean, for like 10 seconds, I thought
terrified.
that I might. Yeah, I was terrified. And I have so much empathy for people that. Anyway, I'm jumping around because it's uncomfortable to talk about. But
Okay, take your time.
But yeah, it was so. I was so thankful to. Can I just say I didn't have health insurance at that time, and Planned Parenthood took me in and took care of me, and it was free. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to mention what a gift that was in itself, and that they were so non-judgmental and kind in that
Great
process.
Organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah, I want you to keep going, but I see this like, when you show up at Planned Parenthood, this is an opportunity for you to talk to somebody outside of the church world and like tell them what's going on. But after everything that we've heard from the beginning of your story and like all these things in your life, it just shows like why would you? You've been told over and over and over and over again, do not talk to anybody about this, about any of these things. And it's
ultimately it was, as an adult, my job to report it to the police. Sure. But I was not in a mental capacity to do that. And not only this, let me just say something else. I was told because of what we were doing by these people that I did not have a case to go to the police.
Right. Yes, of course.
And so that added to the shame, and that it was my fault, is because we were doing more than just kissing, but we were not having sex, but we were doing other things. That's gray area, and that and it's not, when no means no.
That's right.
They're controlling you again. It's more of that same thing where they're telling you that you don't have a case. It's another way of saying don't talk to anybody. Don't bother with it.
Yeah.
You don't have a case. You're wrong. And what I'm hearing from this is like you are coming to people asking for them to validate your feelings. At the very minimum, just come in and like, listen to me, this traumatic thing happened. And instead they're saying, oh, you were dressed inappropriately. You shouldn't have been hanging out with this person in the first place. You, the whole way through. You don't have a case. This wasn't as bad as you think it is. This is all whatever the shit. They're throwing it back on you instead of sitting there and listening and saying, oh, this is fucked up. We need to help this person.
What they were calling it wasn't rape. They were saying things that we got out of control. Mm-hmm. We got out of control. We got out of control. So I knew it was rape. I knew it was rape from day one, but that's how it was being framed, is that it was partially my fault and we got out of control. And then there's the Planned Parenthood thing. And then also they told a shepherd, and that shepherd told Gary and Marilyn. And then that shepherd also told the shepherd of the person who raped me. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to get into this now, but how it was dealt with, which I finally felt brave enough to ask 10 plus years later after it had happened, was that they didn't tell that shepherd of the person who raped me the details. Again, they didn't tell them the details. This is what they told them: that he came to LA and slept with one of their girls, and that wasn't cool. And the shepherd told me, when I heard that, he knew exactly what I was talking about. Because I called him and I said, hey, how did you deal with so-and-so when you found out that he raped me? Mm-hmm. And he went, and it took his breath away for a second. And he goes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't know it was you. They didn't tell me who the girl was. And that's not how it was framed to me. He didn't use the word frame, but he goes, that's not how it was said to me. Mm-hmm. He said, they said that so-and-so came to LA and slept with one of their girls and that it was not cool. And he goes, and I was just mad off of that and worked with him. And he, my rapist, or the person who, mm-hmm. and he didn't seem to think that it was that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
What an asshole.
Well, probably because everybody was telling him too that it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. So to this day, I don't know if I know he knows he raped me. He has to know because of the boundary of what we're not going to do. He was there, me saying, no, all of it. Mm-hmm. He has to on some level know that he did, but he never got dealt with, is my point. Mm-hmm. And when I found that out 10 plus years later, I just lost it. I had to tell my husband to take my kid out of the house. I was kicking things. I was screaming. I was hitting the walls. I was like in mourning. I was so angry, and I was grieving because my biggest thing in all of this was that I just didn't want him to do it again to someone, to think that was okay. And it didn't get dealt with properly. And I hold a lot of guilt over, I don't know that it ever happened again, but if it did, it's still hard. Yeah. That's still hard to trust that they were going to take care of it. I was hoping that he would have been threatened, like within an inch of his life, that he could go to jail, just understand the seriousness of it.
Yeah.
And it's
I never did it again, and it just didn't get handled properly. Yeah. And
that just makes it all the more painful, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, it was like I went through it all over again, and then, Gary and Marilyn knew what happened, and actually, Marilyn said to me basically, like privately, and Gary was standing there with her, that she was surprised that I was still around because of what had happened. But that, I was like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's just basically like I was a strong soldier in her army, and that I was one of her girls. And in that moment, hearing that from her, it almost made it all okay, because I was getting a direct, word from Marilyn and being called like one of her girls. And that was like highest honor at that time. Wow. And so it didn't make it okay. It was just a Band-Aid for my pain. And she said it to me years after it happened. But, and and Gary didn't really say anything. He was just like nodding, standing there nodding. But, when people say that when he says that he doesn't know what's like, I don't know, like chosen, like dementia over certain things or whatever. And
Selective amnesia.
I can't recall. I mean, firsthand, he was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously that says if he truly didn't remember that, again, how they just didn't care about individual people.
And the fact that she was commending you and saying, you're one of my girls, you're one of my good soldiers because you didn't say,
Because I
didn't
didn't
hold
think
him
the
accountable.
person was raped and I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
just, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Heartbreaking.
messed up. And about 6 months after it happened, this was, we had like the 10 days of repentance and stuff. So that it was during a feast time. I was struggling and I'd started to do self-harm because I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And that was one of the ways to let the pain out. And I was having a really hard time. And I was dating my boyfriend, now husband at the time. And I had recently told him about it as well, just because it was important. And I had really not told hardly anybody. I was not only just told to, but also just not ready to talk about it because I was trying to survive. So you just have to push it down and just keep putting one foot in front of the other because it really did impact me so mentally, so negatively. And so I talked to my shepherd. This was a male shepherd, and he told me that the answer was for me to repent for the part that I played in it, and then that the Lord would take care of the rest. And when I talked to him about it, because it was the feast and he was busy, it was almost like, this again? Aren't we past this? Like, why is this coming up or whatever? And also something that was said to my husband around that time, which is interesting and telling, was to the extent of like, haven't you ever, messed around with a girl and things have gone too far?
Wow.
So it was a very permissible atmosphere for that type of stuff to happen.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that I was the only person that had that happen to them. I'm not saying by the same person, although who knows, but I'm just saying and I'm not even saying that culture was unique to our church, because I don't think it is, but I'm just saying that was my experiences sheltered in the church. And so in that time frame that happened, I'm certain I'm not the only person, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to come on and talk. Because when I listen to your guys' podcasts, there are so many similarities. Even like, when Titus was talking about and I'll go back into what I'm talking about, but when he was talking about Rick going into the dorm rooms, Rick didn't come into my dorm room, but people from LA did come into my dorm room that were much older than me. I was 14 and I was in bed with a tank top and shorts on. It was summer, it's hot. I was in bed, no bra. And they came in to wish us good night. I think they might've sang us like a barbershop type of good night sweetheart song or something. It seems I recall.
Another Music Man reference.
Yeah. And a person came and sat down on my bed, put their hand up under my tank top and was rubbing my back, and then kissed me on the side of my mouth, like to kiss on the cheek, but it was the side of my mouth and it was really wet, and whispered in my ear like, good night, sweetheart, or something creepy. And then got up and left. And I was like, I just felt so weirded out. Like, what is happening? I mean, I think a little bit of it was like, I wouldn't say exciting, but I was just, at first I was like, just not, and I wasn't on edge. I just was like frozen. Like I was just anticipating.
In shock.
Like, I was just, I was in shock. I was like, what's, and then that happened. And then they left and I was like, well, okay. I was in a room full of people and there was a bunch of people here, but this just happened. And is this okay? It was almost,
it's like these people, the leaderships, Rick, and the ilk, they raise and create an environment for predators and for people to become predators, and for that behavior to never be corrected and instead to be excused away. So all these boys and men and anybody really, and even women in the way that they emulate Marilyn and stuff, they are being told this behavior that the Rick and these people are the way that the behavior that they're exhibiting, that is what you are measured against. And so it's okay. If they do it, then it's okay that you do it. And no one's going to say anything because it's a culture of predators and victims, and it's awful. Yeah.
And they're normalizing predatory behavior. And then it's like saying, well, oh, so anytime you have those feelings like this doesn't feel right, but then they're saying it's okay, and they're not holding anybody accountable for that bad behavior, that predatory behavior. So then it's this feeling of like, well, I guess maybe I'm just being too sensitive, or maybe it's all right.
Yeah.
Just kind of dismiss it.
Yeah. And so now circling back, I wanted to go back to what we were talking about previous with all of this said, is that, so 10 plus years after this happened, and the church, or the cult, we were calling it the church at the time,
What's
fell
the
apart.
It's true.
So I did write an email to who were my shepherds at the time that had handled that. And I just talked about how harmful it was to me. And they came over and they sat at my kitchen table and they wept with me. And she said, I remember I was a bitch to you that night. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And in that moment, their apology, people don't understand accepting accountability for wrongs that you do and giving an apology can take years of therapy off of someone else's life that they've hurt.
It's very healing. It's very
and
healing.
it was so healing. It was so healing. And then he was like, I want to get you counseling, and I want the church to pay for it. Like, you shouldn't have to deal with this alone. Because I was just starting to let that 10 years of repression of what happened out of my body, and I needed help because I think stuffing things down and then bringing them out later, it gives it a chance to fester, and it gets real. It was a lot for me. And I was wanting counseling, but I didn't know if I wanted the church to pay for it or not. But he was just wanting to help because of the history and loving me and going, yeah, man, like, I just want to help. And so the next day, our family was about to go out for a walk. It was just me, my husband, and our toddler. And they were like, can you come over for a second? Oh, and I should say that that earlier that day, I had found out about the shepherd who had botched the job of the communication to the shepherd who communicated to the person who raped me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He botched the job of communicating to that person's shepherd, right?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So that the shepherd in LA who communicated to the shepherd in the other state had said that it wasn't a rape or used my name. And I had just found that out from the shepherd who was from another state.
Okay.
At the time the rape happened, they lived in another state. So anyway, I had just found that out. And I'm sorry if you can't track with that. It's hard to not use names sometimes.
You just understood. You just found out who was also involved in the misinformation and the hiding and the cover up and all that.
What occurred?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was a shepherd who was in a high-ranking shepherd in LA.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. High ranking. So I also, communicated that to the people who were crying at my table the night before. I think I communicated to them the next day. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact timing of everything, but when I found out, and I just like lost my mind for a second, and then it was just so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm walking up to their house to go talk to them quickly about getting counseling, have no idea what I'm walking into or what to expect. And this person who I'm just saying botched the job or whatever of the communication, the misinformation, walks out the door. So I have to see them in my face, and I'm just not ready for that. Although they lived across the street from me. It's just, it's messy.
Yeah.
The
Prophetic community. Yeah.
Anyway, so I was just like, whoa. And then I walk inside, and all of a sudden, these guys are shadows of who they were at my table the night previous. I found out later that they had gotten a letter in that time frame implicating a family member of something that the family member hadn't done, but it was like they were worried about legal stuff and whatever. So I found that out later, but I didn't know that at the time. But it was all professional, all buttoned up. Another high-ranking leader was in the room with them. All of a sudden, they were, like I said, shadows of who they had been the night before. We don't really understand how we could have done anything different in this situation.
Wow. They just walked everything back that they had apologized for. They walked the apology
back.
That's
how I felt. Yeah, that is exactly true. And because of that, I got very upset. And I basically said, I didn't confirm to you last night, but you said you were a bitch to me. You were a bitch to me. I mean, I felt bullied when I was over at their house. And I was like, and I said, I said a lot of things. I was raising my voice, but I was yelling out details. And what I was told was basically, you're allowed to remember it however you need to remember it or however you want to remember it. And then I said more things, and I was just so upset. And it was just like the worst. I mean, the trauma from the aftermath of the actual physical action, I think, has mentally hurt me more than what happened to me.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Because if you had been met with understanding and compassion and the help that you needed, the support that you needed, instead of being shamed, blamed, and everything in between, you could have probably had a more linear path to your healing.
And
instead, they made it worse.
Yeah, it made it worse. And it was also said at that time, that I must have had something else traumatic, sexually happen to me in order for this to be my response based off of what happened. What happened wasn't enough for me to be upset.
What are they, fucking counselors? They didn't go to school to be therapists. How that is so negligent and reckless of them to put themselves in that position where they could think they know anything about that.
Yeah.
I think it was ultimately down to that we try to protect ourselves when we're being accused or feel accused of something or whatever, because they're not just being, everything I said did happen. So, but I don't know that they can handle it. And again, that hammer and the nails thing, we're talking about this 10 plus years later. They were the hammer in that situation and I was the nail. And I don't know that so I'm allowed to remember how it happened. I am allowed to remember how it happened.
Yeah. And
Yes,
you should.
I do remember how it happened.
Yes. And thank you for sharing how it happened and putting that on the record, because they're trying to gaslight you. They're trying to lie to you. They're trying to misdirect you. They've been doing that the entire time to cover their asses. Those shepherds that you talked to in the aftermath of Shalom's letters and you had this heart-to-heart real experience with, for a moment, they were human beings. And then the cult came in and made them brainwashed cult members again. Remember who you serve.
Yeah.
Yes. And then they went back to being human beings by saying, well, the reason why we were like that was because we got this letter. So that was good context for me because I was feeling it didn't help in my healing or the hurt. It was just good context to have. Mm-hmm. And then later I did post a comment on Facebook, kind of a pretty revealing long comment about what happened, some of the things that happened to me. And I did get a phone call again from her of just, I just wish I could help. I just wish I could do something. I know that there's, but I don't know what to do. And then there was a suggestion that had I ever tried to reach out to the person who raped me and just talk to them. And I thought, wow, she's never been through this before, or that's just so out of touch, that's just, really. And again, I think she sincerely was trying to help. Mm-hmm. It was just showing me how maybe that's grasping at straws. That's a real far reach to think that somebody should talk to somebody that did that to them to I don't know, maybe she'd think that it would de-escalate it or bring in some, I don't need to de-escalate what happened to me. I don't need to love this. A lot of people do love the person who raped me. They are, and I have to on social media, even though we're not friends, see posts about what a protector and a loyal, wow. This and that and relationships when it's his birthday and it's triggering for me. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to have a friendship. I don't have to, and other people can do whatever the fuck they want, mm-hmm. but I don't have to. I don't need to call and try to figure things out with this person because what happened. And the way that it went down is the way that it went down. And
the way that
it is what it is.
Yeah. The way that shepherds can help is not by further blaming you and putting it on your shoulders that you need to go talk and smooth things out with this person and come to an understanding, or that you're remembering things differently or any of that stuff. The way that they can help is just by being honest about their role and just stop gaslighting and to continue supporting. That's the way any of us can help with this kind of stuff, is just show up honestly for somebody. But instead, they are always about covering their own asses and protecting the leadership and worried about, how can this come back and hurt me? And it's like, fuck you, so much of this. And I understand that there's nuance and that there are people that are stuck between a rock and a hard place, or at least they think that they are. But I think a lot of what we're learning from this is people have the opportunity to do the right thing after decades of doing the wrong thing. Now is the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, now is the time. And that's the thing too, is like the way that shepherding, the level that we were being asked to dedicate our lives and have these shepherds tell us, you know, what we were supposed to do, how we should think about things, how we should handle things. We were to go to them with all of our personal problems as if they were like counselors. They even called it counseling, personal counseling.
Oh.
But they were completely
idiots.
Ill-prepared. They didn't know what they were doing. They weren't educated. They weren't trained by anybody except for the higher leadership. So what's sad to me is these people who did show you compassion at that moment 10 years later where they were like, yeah, we did fuck up and we're sorry. Yeah. And then this other higher up asshole comes in and basically is like, don't you dare be a human. You know, this is how you think. So they're brainwashed into thinking like that their compassion was wrong. You know what I mean? I
think the letter is what scared them. I don't know how much the other person played a part. It could very well be that way, but no, I still hear what you're saying. One thing I realized, and I don't want to interrupt. I just wanted to say, but I do want to get it out so I don't forget. I don't know if I said this already, but when I went to them 6 months after it happened, when I went to this guy shepherd, and this is just because of how important mental health services would have been to so many of us. And I basically, when I told them, I said I needed professional help. I might have said this, but I did say I need professional help. And they said to me, you don't need professional help. You need to repent for your part. And then later, when I reminded them of this 10 plus years later, they said that that's not what they meant when they had said that I needed to repent for my part and coming up from for the part that I played in it and for coming out from under my covering. But I don't know how I should have taken that. I think
just
maybe
more
what they meant when
gaslighting.
they said
That's so frustrating.
That's not what they meant. Yeah, is maybe because it was the feast of repentance, and so they were just going along with the word that was coming. Or I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know why they said it. It still did the damage it did. Even though they were trying to voice to me 10 plus years later, their intent wasn't to harm me with that, but it did.
When an adult comes to you and says, I think I need to seek professional help, the best thing you can say is, awesome. Can I help you find a therapist in the area? I can pull up a list.
Or just
do you have health insurance? Or just, you're an adult, go make choices for your list. Exactly. Like, it is not the right thing to be like, no, actually, you need to go to church more. Like, that's not the fucking response. You don't get to tell people what to do with their lives. And, you know, of course, that's...
No, it just adds insult to injury where for someone to be sexually assaulted and then be told, well, really, you need to repent for your part in it. You played no part in it.
Right.
Yeah.
No means no. I don't care if you were both totally naked and you were about to have sex. And in that moment, before he was about, you were like, no, it still means fucking no.
No matter what stage of the game you're in.
Yes.
No
that is so true. Yeah.
I love that analogy about tea.
I was just going to say that. Oh my God, the tea and consent. Yes, anybody who's listening to this, go on YouTube and look up tea and consent because it is such a good example of what consent is.
I will be teaching it to my daughters when it's time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So back to the whole saga of what happened and the aftermath is so I did push everything down and I did see the person. I did see them a couple of times after. And so one of them was, a year or two later at Shiloh. I was walking up the hill from the amphitheater and they were walking down with a friend and I just froze. And then I'm like, I don't like confrontation and I'm a people pleaser. And I honestly did not know what to do. We were right in front of each other and he was being friendly and he said hi and he hugged me and I was like, okay. And I'm just trying to be normal. And then I went back down. I don't know where I was headed to, but I went back down. I went into the bathroom down there because it was relatively empty. And I just had a panic attack. I just couldn't handle it. And then I had anxiety the rest of the time I was there. My shepherd at the time, she saw what happened and she was like, I can't believe that he thinks he could hug you. My boyfriend, now husband at the time, had to have somebody talk him down. He wanted to go beat him up. He was he had to have a person calm him down. He was so upset that he thought that he could. I think I saw him again in close contact, when Marilyn died. And then I saw him again at a friend's wedding. And the times I'd seen him before, I had really suppressed a lot. The wedding was after the collapse of everything. And so I just started to get into it. So when I saw him, I went outside and started hyperventilating. I didn't vomit, but I thought I was going to vomit. And that's just how I flipped out. And then it was just horrible. And then afterwards, everybody was back at a hotel having like this like reception-y type, like, or just drinking, I think. The reception had already happened, but everybody stayed at this certain hotel. And he was there. And a close friend of mine had said to me, like, hey, are you okay? I knew he was coming, but I didn't want you to not come, so I didn't say anything. And I was just like, oh my God, like, what is wrong with you?
Seriously, that's so insensitive.
Because I had told them after everything had collapsed about what had happened. And which, you know, we were learning and growing at that time. And, you know, it was just a really hard experience, and it shut me down. I mean, and it's worse for other people. So and that's the other thing. I always compare. I always try to minimize what I go through and compare, because
there's no comparison with suffering or trauma. I do it too, but you know, I'm just like telling you, don't compare. It's your trauma is your trauma. Yeah. Your individual pain is the most important pain because it's yours.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I keep working on that. But so anyway, after seeing them there, I shut down for 3 weeks. I didn't shower. I didn't get out of bed. I wasn't working. My husband was basically a single parent to our child. Like it really affected me. Seeing them unexpectedly. And
yeah, I was going to say, to be caught off guard like that, you weren't mentally prepared to have to face him.
The good thing that came out of it is it pushed me back into more aggressive therapy, which is what I needed. I was being a little lackadaisical at that point with it. I was getting it here and there, but I was just, it was just a lot. I mean, this was all like very not that long after everything happened. So, yeah. So then after that, I did start aggressively going to therapy and getting a lot better in my head starting to deal with some really tough things. And that one being one of them.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to read that? It's that from your Facebook post to Gary Hargrave, that these things weren't the worst. Just that one where you end it with "go away." Yeah. I just love that. I would love to hear it.
I was talking to Gary, said, stop misplacing and shrugging off the blame. For the love of God, get off of this and any other platform. We struggle to heal when you don't apologize for what really happened. You undo the healing process when you pop up on social media less than 2 years later, rebranding yourself. The least you owe my generation and others affected is to heal. Go away.
Fuck yeah, girl.
I love that. Go away. Jesus. Yeah. That's awesome. That was Lauren Beckman sharing just all the things. That was so much in there. Just like so much of it just infuriated me because it was so like so many of the stories that we've heard. Just so many of them, though. And God, her ability to just the bravery that we talked about, with her strength that like was in her this whole time, and then being able to confidently come forward and still being able to retain the truth that she knew, despite all of the shit, is very inspiring and just really important, I think, to hear all of that.
Absolutely.
What did you think?
I think she's so strong. I think that that is a tremendous amount to have to go through, like from her situation with her father, very traumatic, and then experiencing molestation in San Diego and living with that couple where he was just so awful, and going to LA, being sexually harassed by Rick, then being raped, and then having it handled so poorly by the people that she was told to trust the most. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's devastating. It's not surprising because that was the culture. And like all of the little things that she lists out, that I don't know how many of them like we're including, but there's just perfect examples of the control culture, the shame culture, just all the little T's. So she definitely had some of those big T traumas, all the little T traumas of just being put down constantly, always told you're wrong. Even the dumb things about, you're a social media whore for putting all these pictures of your husband up. It's like every little part of our lives and personalities were scrutinized, criticized. It's like no wonder that we have all these like insecurities and issues. It's just being,
Yeah, it's like the little ones, like you're calling them little T's, these little traumas, like the daily stuff, like you said, the social media and all of that. It is essential for an organization like this that wants to control every aspect of your life to control every aspect of your life. Because if it was only the big things, you would recognize, you would see the contrast. You would be like, oh, I'm in control of my life, except for when like this thing happens. But it's every little thing. It's you just got 3rd-degree burns on your leg, get back on the line. It's you can't post this many things. It's I have access to your wife right in front of you. I have the ability to like, you're feeding your daughter and I can like go in and do this. It's like all of these things just over and over and over, gaslighting you and telling you that like it wasn't that bad, or you need to shut up, or don't talk to your mom about it, separating the parents. She has so many of the stories and she recognizes a lot of like every little thing. She's not letting them get away with one thing, and they shouldn't, because it was a lifetime of this stuff over and over and over and
That's
over.
exactly right.
And they need to be held accountable for all of it, because it was those little things that allowed the big stuff to happen. It was them taking those little traumas and making life, you were used to life like this. She was told it was normal, every little thing, like don't tell your mom, don't, don't talk about this stuff. It's like, so when she ends up at Planned Parenthood, she can't even say it because she's been trained to not say it.
Yeah. And it's the idea that was promoted that, oh, this is all because we love you. We're family. We're treating you like this because we love you. And it creates that Stockholm syndrome. Like you do think that you love your captor and that they love you, and there's no escaping. Just like she said, she was just like, how old will we be by the time Rick might die so that we don't have to live under this oppression anymore? That's heartbreaking. To feel that, there's no escape, even though logically, like I could leave at any time. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like life is, you're trapped. You're absolutely trapped.
Yeah, it's amazing. And that like to think that the only way out is for this person to die. It's like,
but it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does make sense because they control your whole world. Amazing. That was, I'm so thankful that she spoke up about all of that stuff. I think it's very revealing and very, very helpful in understanding what this place was. So you're awesome, Lauren.
Superwoman.
Super. Cool.
Do we need to record
An
intro?
yeah.
Do I need to drop something like I normally do? Thank you for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Send us your emails at the address in the show notes below. We'd love to hear from you. Take it easy and don't join a cult.